I would love to just run away and start over somewhere new. Have any of you ever said something like this to your friends? I can definitely imagine it. Even if you don't mean it completely seriously, sometimes you just feel like you need to escape and get away. That seems to be how Georgina Gharsallah feels in 2018. At least, that's what she says. But what happens when you just disappear shortly after making a statement like that? Should your loved ones really assume that you've voluntarily broken out of your everyday life? Or could a statement like that even prevent a serious crime from being discovered in time? Georgina Gharsallah's mother is English. Her father is from Libya and moved to Brighton as a young man to attend university. The two met at university, fell in love, married, and had 4 daughters over the years. The family moved back to Libya for a while. After a few years, however, the 6 of them returned to England. Georgina and her sisters therefore grew up bilingual and speak fluent English and Arabic. The family settled in Worthing, a small coastal town in the south of England, where Georgina grew up from the age of 10. As an adult, she had 2 children with a man. However, the relationship did not last. Georgina then dated another man with whom she also lived. In early 2018, however, the two decided to end their relationship. Georgina then moved back to her mother in Worthing. Her 2 children came with her. This is naturally a difficult time for Georgina, who is now 30 years old. She has been struggling with an eating disorder for some time and occasionally drinks too much alcohol. She always tells her friends that she would like to leave everything behind and just run away. When Georgina suddenly disappears, her relatives are faced with ominous questions. Has Georgina really started a new life somewhere? Or has something terrible happened to her? On March 7th, 2018, Georgina has a few errands to run. Her cell phone is broken, so she definitely wants to find a repair shop to fix it. After that, she has to do some shopping. She also has an appointment at the job center. As a single mother of 2, it's not easy to find work. But Georgina is determined. At least she is supposed to be, because she doesn't show up for her appointment at the job center. She simply lets it pass without canceling. Georgina has arranged with her father to pick her up in town. But he waits in vain at the meeting point. Georgina is sometimes not very reliable. Although she is living with her mother again, she is still an adult and does not inform her mother about every change of plan and every step she takes. Georgina's children are with their father this week, so she doesn't have that obligation either. However, as the next few days pass, Georgina's mother starts to worry. And when Georgina doesn't arrange to meet her ex as agreed to pick up the 2 children at the weekend, her family finally believes that something is wrong. Georgina's parents first call her friends, then the surrounding hospitals. But no one has heard from Georgina. Finally, the Gharsallahs decide to report Georgina missing. As in most cases when an adult disappears, the police don't do much at first. After all, Georgina is 30 years old and responsible for herself and can stay wherever she wants. But after a few days, the police begin to classify the case as worrying. Georgina's cell phone and bank card have not been used since March 7th, 2018. She is simply gone. The last trace the police can find is a surveillance recording from that day, taken at 9:50 a.m. It comes from a small kiosk called Clifton Food and Wine Shop. When the police ask the owner, he actually remembers Georgina. He says that Georgina asked him for advice about her broken cell phone. The shopkeeper showed her the direction to the nearest repair shop. The police have questioned the owners of all cell phone shops in Worthing, but none of them can confirm that Georgina was there that morning. The camera footage only shows Georgina leaving the kiosk and appearing to turn right toward the city center. It is unclear how Georgina's cell phone was broken. Based on the available data, it can only be determined that it was last used properly in the early morning around 3 a.m. Even if it was no longer working properly after that, it remained switched on until shortly after 11:30 a.m. on the day of Georgina's disappearance. At that point, either the battery ran out, the cell phone finally gave up the ghost, or someone turned it off. And there has been no trace of Georgina Gharsallah since she visited the kiosk at 9:50 a.m. She has disappeared into thin air in the center of the small town of Worthing. She has no contact with her children or ex-boyfriend. There have been no payments with her bank card and no phone calls for weeks. The further spring progresses, the less likely it seems that Georgina has voluntarily run away somewhere. And soon there will be revelations that are darker than the family could have imagined. It is decided to go public with the case and search for Georgina. The police launch a large-scale search operation. A total of 27 areas are searched, and more than 60 potential sightings of Georgina are investigated. The homes of Georgina's relatives and her ex-partners are searched without result. This is naturally frustrating. There are virtually no clues as to Georgina's disappearance. However, there is one sighting that appears plausible at first glance. At 3:30 p.m., 2 women are recorded by a surveillance camera on Chappell Road in Worthing. Georgina's family is 100% certain that one of the 2 women is Georgina. The police, however, consider this sighting unconfirmed. To date, neither of the 2 women has come forward to the police. Georgina's family has no idea who the second woman could be, nor do they know what Georgina might have done in the hours between visiting the kiosk in the morning and walking down Chappell Road. The bag and shoes contradict the theory that the woman in the video is Georgina. The items in the video do not match those Georgina was wearing when she left the house in the morning. She must have changed her shoes and bag at some point during the day. Despite this discrepancy, Georgina's family stands by this sighting and is 100% certain that it is Georgina. In April 2018, there is a brief glimmer of hope. A witness comes forward to the police and provides a promising lead. He claims to have seen Georgina on the day of her disappearance, not alone, but accompanied by 2 men who were arguing with her. The police are able to locate these 2 men and appear to develop a strong suspicion that they are responsible for the crime. And this suspicion must be very concrete because both men are arrested. They are suspected of murdering Georgina Gharsallah. One of the 2 men is said to have been in regular contact with Georgina before her disappearance. However, the men's detention is only short-lived. Both suspects are released after a short time. Unfortunately, the sighting can never be verified. It takes place near a Tesco Express supermarket. However, when the police request the surveillance camera footage from the store, they are provided with recordings from the wrong day. The recordings from March 7th are still not available to the police to this day. And that is also the reason why the sighting could never be verified. The public never found out who the 2 men were or how they came to be suspected of murder. This was withheld for tactical reasons. In early 2019, the police received a threatening message. The family was told to transfer 10,000 bitcoins to the sender within a week. Otherwise, Georgina's body would soon be found outside the hospital in Worthing. In such cases, the police naturally first try to find proof that the message is authentic and that the person they are looking for is really in the sender's custody. The best way to do this is to ask a question that only the missing person could answer correctly. In Georgina's case, The question is what Georgina's cat's name is. And indeed, the correct answer comes back. The police investigate the sender of the message, with a sobering result. It is a tasteless hoax. The fact that the security question was answered correctly was apparently pure luck. The person behind the blackmail attempt operates from South Africa and is known for this perfidious scam. Nevertheless, the police seem increasingly convinced that Georgina did not disappear voluntarily, but was the victim of a violent crime. In August 2019, the missing persons search officially becomes a murder investigation. Something strange happens that same month. Georgina owned a handheld PlayStation. And now, a year and a half after her disappearance, there is a transaction on an account linked to the console. At the time, it was reported that a bank account linked to a PlayStation console that was in Georgina's possession on the day of her disappearance had been activated with a debit card payment in the last 3 weeks. The police are currently waiting for Sony USA to get back to them with further information. Unfortunately, there has been no further update on this since the end of 2020, so I can't tell you anything more about it. If any of you are familiar with this kind of thing and have any explanation for what happened, please feel free to write it in the comments. Georgina's family is now making serious accusations against the police. They claim that some of the surveillance camera footage was not evaluated until more than a year later. Other recordings have disappeared without explanation. In addition, Georgina's name was not added to the Interpol list until the summer of 2019. If she had been kidnapped and taken to another country, for example, it could have been helpful to involve Interpol earlier. The police have now also publicly admitted that they made mistakes in their investigation. That is why the family is no longer really cooperating with the police, but with a British investigative journalist. In his research, he claims to have found out that Georgina was allegedly dealing drugs from time to time. Unfortunately, it is not known whether the men who were briefly arrested also have connections to the drug scene. A witness is said to have told this journalist that Georgina said shortly before her disappearance that she was about to start something big. What exactly she meant by this is not known. An MTV documentary on the Georgina Gharsallah case was filmed in 2022. The MTV team is in contact with the investigative journalist and gets a lead on the drug scene in Worthing from him. They meet an anonymous informant who agrees to appear in the documentary as long as his identity remains secret. He says he heard that Georgina had connections to the drug scene in London, more specifically to a so-called county line gang. These county line gangs bring drugs from the London metropolitan area to smaller towns. And Georgina is said to have worked with one of these gangs.
How would she get linked to drug dealers in London?
Worthing is one of the hotspots for county lines drug dealers, and with the circle of friends Georgina was involved with, there was a lot of drugs floating about.
But why would she have disappeared, in your opinion?
She could have told them she was out, that she was leaving. So once you decide to leave, they'll get rid of you because they've got no use for you anymore, and you know too much, you'll just end up killed.
That's a pretty extreme theory, of course, but unfortunately, it might even be the most plausible one. Sure, Georgina told friends she wanted to start a new life, but she would have left her 2 sons behind, and her disappearance would have been incredibly spontaneous. Her cell phone was really broken. She even talked to the kiosk operator about it. There's no reason to believe that she didn't want to have her phone repaired that day. What's more, her bank cards were never used again. None of this really looks like a voluntary disappearance. It seems more like someone was involved in Georgina's disappearance. The Georgina Gharsallah case is really sad because it's so relatable. Georgina disappeared in broad daylight in a quiet town, for whatever reason. Do you have a theory about what might have happened to Georgina? Do you think she disappeared voluntarily? Or was she kidnapped? Feel free to write your thoughts in the comments. By the way, you'll also be supporting the channel because any interaction increases the likelihood that the video will be suggested to people who haven't subscribed to Insolito yet. Thank you in advance. Other than that, there's not much more to say. I wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching the video, and hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, bye everyone.